Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, GoPowercat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Now, here's your host, GoPowercat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the Insiders. That's not Tim Everson in the corner. I am Tim Fitzgerald. That is Brien Hanley, and that's Glenn Kinley. And oh yeah, Tim couldn't be with us today. He just had another appointment. And so we found the greatest substitute ever, but he couldn't be here, so we invited Ryan Gilbert.
All right.
Wow. So, yeah, we're off to a good start here, Gilbert. Hey, I just want to point out that I decorated for the holidays.
I like it.
It looks good.
It took way too much effort to do it, but I did it. But I didn't feel like it was complete, and then I felt like I needed to add something since Gilbert was coming on, because he's festive. So we're gonna do this one. This one I like better. It's perfect, absolutely perfect. It looks so good.
Then he can say whatever he wants, and it doesn't have to fall back on Ryan Gilbert.
That's right.
What do you mean, what, Ryan Gilbert? That was a Grinch.
Yeah. Why'd you take that off? You should keep that on there. It looks better.
Okay, boys, let's dive in. Welcome to everyone that is watching on YouTube or Twitter. And make sure you leave your comments. Hopefully we'll get to some questions later in the show. I don't know how much time we can spend on talking about Kansas State's game, but by golly jeepers, we're going to try to explain what we saw And I've tried on a podcast, I've tried on a walk and talk, and now I'll try on the Insiders to explain a game that honestly is pretty close to unexplainable.
Yeah.
But we will give her a shot. We'll get into a little basketball. We'll get into a little championship weekend of college football and of course, K-State's bowl announcement and the future of Will Howard. But welcome, Brien Hanley. Brien, you've seen a lot of football. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No.
It was truly bizarre.
Yeah, I've watched football for 40 plus years that I can remember, and I've never seen anything like. I've seen a lot of big plays in a football game, but not in a competitive football game. When one team's blowing somebody out, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen 8, 60-yard touchdowns. I've seen a lot. But in a competitive football game, I've never seen anything like that. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I kept thinking, are they even trying to tackle? No. And on a couple of those, and we could either name names or not, they were not trying to tackle people, and it was absolutely pathetic. It was wild. Never seen anything like it.
Glenn, there might be some blowback after that game within the locker room because he's right. Some guys just look like, I don't want to be here. I'm not going to dive in the snow. So we'll just give up the touchdown.
Yeah, I imagine there might be a come to Jesus moment in the film study this week, whether that's a conversation about the effort that you're getting. I can't imagine Joe Klanderman's very happy. I can't imagine a guy like Coach True is very happy. And quite frankly, I don't want to be dramatic, but after the way that looked, if I'm the coaches, whether you mean it or not, I'm at least going to say something along the lines of like, hey, if you don't want to be here, if you don't want to make plays, if the snow was too much for you, the portal's open in a week, And again, I don't mean to be dramatic. I know it's one loss. I know it was a crazy snow game. It was probably hard to get your footing, but it was unbelievable. I haven't seen anything like it either. You're talking about a game in which K-State had the ball for, 48 minutes or something like that? You're talking about 5 or 6 plays that were like 50-plus yards for Iowa State. It was unbelievable. I rewatched the game last night. I'm saying to myself, what are we going to talk about? We can only say on the Insiders for 60 minutes they didn't tackle so many times. I can keep saying it if you guys want until we get to 60 minutes, but I don't know if that would be too fun to listen to. But they didn't tackle.
They didn't tackle at all. Ryan Gilbert, they looked disinterested on defense. The offense kept plugging away. It wasn't easy for the offense, but they kept answering until they had no more answers.
Right, and I'm sure Brien could speak to this the best, but it probably isn't fun to tackle somebody when it's snowing and it's freezing cold. Those pads, I'm sure that doesn't feel good, but that's what you signed up for. You can't warm up to these moments. I mean, this is what you live for. I'm sure playing in the snow as a kid, like, certain players could only dream of doing something like that. On offense, K-State was, of course, able to move the football. Ben Sinnott, the hockey player, played well. And offensively, there's not, a whole lot to critique. Obviously, could have been better, but defensively, man, I know Glenn said it best. We could talk about this all day long, but K-State, really just 6 plays, really. If K-State makes fundamental tackles that you make, I get it's not easy in the snow. I get that. It's hard to get your footing. Kleiman mentioned that post game, after the game, that it's not easy, but you just got to make those plays. No other way to put it.
Iowa State seemed to have their footing.
That's where I was going.
Iowa State seemed to have their footing. And I get what you're saying, Ryan. I 100% understand, but I'm just not giving a pass for that. I'm just not, because if they were able to find their footing and able to make the plays, then why the hell weren't we able to find our footing and make the plays too? It just seemed like what we are saying, that the guys didn't want to be there. And Glenn, I get it's tough to make a tackle in the snow, but you know what? If you don't want to be in the snow or whatever, put on some more clothes. If that's what you're thinking, I don't want the snow on my arms or this, there's nothing saying that you can't layer up and keep that from happening. Now, the problem with that is once you wear some sleeves and stuff like that, you get snow, which turns into water, which turns into cold. That's probably not the best idea either. So if you're going to play, either that or just say, hey, guys, I don't want to play today. I just can't play today.
Don't go out there if you don't want to play.
That's basically what it comes out to.
Yep, exactly. But Brien, you hint at it, and I haven't been told there was an equipment issue, but I I look back at the game I most immediately remember was the Ron Prince 2006 Texas Bowl, when he told equipment manager Shorty Kleinow, these are the shoes we need to take. Don't take those. And the ones he told him not to take were the shoes they needed for a wet field. And then Rutgers, it was just embarrassing to watch how much better footing Rutgers had than Kansas State, on top of being better than K-State with Ray Rice. They just looked clownish out there trying to defend. And of course, in Ron Prince's way, he blamed Shorty for that and then fired the guy he told to leave those shoes behind. That's when we knew Ron Prince was a psychopath. But anyhow, Glenn, did it look like there was an equipment issue? Iowa State looked better equipped to be in the snow than Kansas State, and yet they both are Nike schools. They should have the same equipment.
Yeah, I don't know if it was equipment or over pursuit or what it was. I mean, K-State's offense seemed to be fine, right? Like Will Howard threw the ball 48 times, completed half of them, and so if it was that, I would think the receivers would have been slipping around more. So I wouldn't go there. I don't know what it was. Part of it, maybe there was guys on the defense. I haven't looked on the roster and seen where they're all from. Maybe there was guys who hadn't played in the snow before. But I can't imagine it was too much different from one side to the other. The defense to me looks like a team that knew they were out of the Big 12 championship race. It looked like more of that than an equipment thing. And I don't know why the offense looked so much better. I mean, part of it might have just been it was hard to tackle and catch up to a guy in the snow. But I think maybe part of it was also it was, we'll get into it, maybe Will Howard's last game in the Bill. It was almost certainly Ben Simmons' last game in the Bill, and Phil Brooks' last game in the Bill. So the offense was going to be ready for this one. It didn't feel like the defense was.
Yeah, Abu Sama was ready. This was the third string running back. They didn't bring their top two running backs. Maybe they knew. Maybe they knew he was part human, part snow plow, snow ski, because he was going so much faster than anyone on K-State's defense. 16 carries, 276 yards, 17.2 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, flew the jet home, is now have 8 expectant children. He was that productive on Saturday. Hey, Gilbert, should we have known on the first play of the game when he ran straight up the middle for a touchdown that this was not going to be a normal day?
I think Chris Kleiman should have known after maybe the first, second, third, fourth, fifth play of not keeping a lid on things. That should have been a sign to say, let's go ahead and keep a lid on things, not let anything get behind you. And we've seen K-State do that throughout the season. It didn't really work against Oklahoma State, where K-State tried to contain things. But in a game like that, I mean, it's what you got to do. But yeah, Fitz, this was 2 years ago at home against Iowa State, same exact way that game started. It was a long Breece Hall 75-yard touchdown run to open that game up. And so Kleiman, I mean, I don't think he learned his lesson both after that game and after the way that this game sort of started. But Glenn, you bring up a real good point. I'm sure we'll talk about Howard more, but people's minds probably weren't in the right place with this game, especially coming off of a Big 12 championship last year, where that's sort of the standard that you set for yourself, for your program, to know that you can't compete in that. Offensively, I think K-State's a good team, right? And so they don't necessarily have to be locked in to score points, right? You can score despite some distractions, but on defense, it just seemed like a team that knew it had, I don't want to say nothing to play for, because you're still playing for a better bowl game, but as far as the Big 12 race, that 100% had something to do with it.
And I'll say this too, I think when you're looking at that defense, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like it wasn't what we've seen. We saw them against Oklahoma, against Mizzou, they allowed the explosive plays. Against Oklahoma State, they went too far the opposite way probably and kind of let them go shorter and get the little gains. I would have rather seen that in this game. In those conditions, give them 6 yards, 8 yards, 4, 6, and just hope they either fumble or make a mistake or snap it over the head like the guy did, right? Like, if you make them run 20 plays on a drive in those conditions, I'm betting that something goes wrong. Right. When you only make them run 3 and the third one is 82 yards or whatever it was, it's not going to go well. I would have rather seen K-State go too far the opposite direction, quite frankly. I mean, let them just drive down the field and And at least that gives your offense some time to sit down in between drives.
I mean, you're right, and I agree with that. But if you look at it, that's not really what happened. Guys they were there. They just didn't tackle the people. So, whether we were backing up or we were right at the line of scrimmage, it's not that we were out of position. Right. Guys were in the positions to make the plays. They just literally didn't make them. And that's where the difference comes in. It's that, yes, I get, hey, just keep it. And Iowa State did a good job. I think we should have run the ball more against Iowa State and maybe not throw it 48 times in the snow, but that's a different conversation. But the bottom line is like, look, just make the tackle. And that's all that it is. And you knew that we didn't want to tackle because we would have a guy there, another guy would be coming up, and they just waited to see if that guy made the tackle. And when he didn't, then they were out of position to go and make the tackle. And then the guy goes and runs for 75 yards. It was just mind-boggling to see that guys just weren't willing to put it on the line. They weren't. Let's just call it what it is. They weren't willing to put it on the line.
I am going to call out two guys because this play is going to stick in my mind for a very long time. When Will Lee, instead of trying to tackle the ball carrier, gave him a power boost with a shove that I think was intended to knock him over. Instead, it sped him up to 3 times the speed K-State was playing, not just twice. And meanwhile, VJ Payne, who is in proximity, is just watching all of this go down without a serious effort to make a tackle. No effort to dive at the legs, nothing. Oh, no, we gave up another touchdown. I've never seen anything like it. I know that Chris Kleiman was very disappointed in how everything transpired. I'm told behind the scenes he was furious with what he saw from his team, and I think that's good news. I mean, he seems to be he's a player's coach, and sometimes that means you're too soft. And from what I heard, he was not too soft. He was pretty disgusted by what he saw on the field. Let's move to the post game after K-State has lost 42-35. K-State had as many points as Iowa State ran plays, by the way. They scored 42 points on 35 plays. That shouldn't be possible. If you're looking for a positive, K-State kept them out of the red zone. So they stopped them from getting in the red zone by letting them score earlier.
If you watch 90% of the plays of that game, like a random 90%, not even cherry picking and taking out those explosive plays, or even 80%, you would be like, so did K-State win by 35 or 42?
Yep.
Right? Like it was just those big. It was unbelievable to watch. It was
crazy.
And some of those plays too, if you watch the first 80% of the play, you would be like, oh, that was a loss of 6. Nice. No, it was a gain of 63.
No, they thought two-hand touch was going to get the job done on a snow day, but it didn't, as it turns out.
I threw out the idea, but your Mark, he said we couldn't change the rule at week 11 of the season.
Yeah, that's a remarkable statement. That's probably the right thing to do, by the way. But let's talk about the end of the game. Will Howard was visibly emotional. Threw his helmet. He was not happy. And then there's some video of him. My friend Tyler Jackson got some great video of him leaving the field, walking up the tunnel, and giving that forlonged look over his shoulder as if, bye, girlfriend, I'll never see you again. And a couple notes here. We are reporting at GoPowercat, and I've made a daily delivery about this, that what we're expecting Will Howard sometime, maybe today, maybe it's going to be 10 days away to enter the transfer portal, or at least announce he's going to enter the transfer portal. Can't technically go in for another week or so. And Will Howard will not play at K-State. He's not enrolled for next semester. We don't expect him to play in the bowl game. We do expect him to end up at a Power 5 institution. There is one school that seems to be the leader right now, but nothing's done with that. That we have posted that school's identity at GoPowercat. But Brien, is this awkward to have your senior quarterback, who does have his COVID year available, decide to pack up and leave, even though he just became the career touchdown pass leader?
It's definitely awkward. I'm not sure. I mean, we saw this happen at Wake Forest this past year.
Comparison.
Yeah, exactly. So considering where Will may be going, but that's another conversation. But yeah, it's definitely awkward. But you know what? What about college football in the last 5 years is not awkward? True. So, I mean, that's the whole thing about this, is that, yes, it's awkward, but awkward is the new normal when it comes to college football. So it's inevitable. We talked about it last week. There's no way. And I said, there's no way he's the starting quarterback at K-State. I don't care if he comes back or not. He wasn't going to be, and he's going to leave. And I understand why. I actually think it's smart on his part to go and do that. But yes, absolutely, Fitz. It's awkward, but not unprecedented. And I think it's going to happen more. I mean, we've seen it at other places. I mean, I don't follow enough schools to be able to say, that this guy was the leading, all-time passing leader or wherever, and he's going to another school. But we've seen it at several other schools where a guy's been there 2, 3, 4 years and then go somewhere else and plays. So it's just the way college football is.
And I think two things can be true at once. It can be awkward and kind of weird. Maybe it's just a word, but it also, I think it's just what's best for everyone involved, right? I mean, it's what's best for Will Howard. It's what's best probably for Kansas State football. And Will is a smart kid, and he knows, for better or worse, Chris Kleiman is so loyal, sometimes to a fault, that I do wonder if Will had said, Coach, I want to come back. Give me one more year. I can win another Big 12 title. But I think Will knows that wasn't what was best for him, and it wasn't what was best for Kansas State. He's smart enough to know that the roar at Bill Snyder Family Stadium when Avery Johnson broke off a run the noise was different, guys. And he knows that if he came back, I think probably, although it frustrates him, and I don't think it's fair. In fact, it's not fair. But he knows that if he came back, or even this year, he wasn't treated the same way as kind of the new flashy freshman 4-star quarterback. And so it is weird, but I think it's what's best for him, and it saves an even more awkward situation. It's like the breakup where it sucks. To use your comparison, Fitz, the breakup where it sucks, but you both know that you're better off.
Over. Yep. Ryan Gilbert, it's awkward. We heard him at the post-game press conference. Everything felt like it was over. I mean, right. Absolutely everything. I don't see any chance he's back at K-State. Now, certainly the school we've reported, there's nothing done with that. We mentioned that it's, just kind of in the works, but there's other quarterbacks out there that institution's also looking at. But he will be somewhere next year, and he really sounded like it, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and he really he was very classy about it, though. I know he joked with Kellis Robinette that despite all the things that we've said, about him through the years, he appreciated our coverage, and so it kind of felt like the finishing touch, putting a bow on everything. And not only just post game with him talking to us, but you mentioned it, like when he walked towards the locker room and took one look back and at the field, like, this is it for me. And so that again ties back to what we were saying earlier about this team not being really focused and locked in on this game. And Avery Johnson's emergence, I think, kind of solidified this decision for Will Howard. But it's interesting to maybe talk about, if Kansas State's undefeated right now, or at least playing for a Big 12 championship game, does this change things for Will Howard? Does Avery Johnson even come into the mix midway through the season? And does Will Howard want to prove something for the NFL scouts with his one final year in Manhattan rather than somewhere else? But obviously that didn't happen. And he handled it with class, though, and you have to appreciate that.
Well, let's get to that video. We have that here. This is Will Howard's opening comments following the game. It took him a while to get into post game, which I understand. He had a lot of probably drying out and showering and drying out and showering. I don't know how cold he was. And then there was senior stuff. It took him a while, but this is what he said when he got there.
Before you guys even say anything, I just want to say thank you guys for all that you guys do, all the hours that you guys put in, as much, as we try not to listen to the media and all the outside noise. I know how much time you guys put in and how much, you guys show up every week, win or lose. So I know that means a lot to the K-State fans, and I just want to say thank you guys, and I'm grateful for you, no matter what you guys say about me, and even you, Kellis.
Yeah, Will was great to work with. He really was. Even after bad games, he'd walk into that room and talk to us. That's a pro. Now, my only complaint about Will is some of the tough times he's gone through were self-inflicted. I've said this on the podcast. I'll jump down anyone's throat who wants to still criticize him for the pandemic season when he's a true freshman playing in those conditions. Yeah. Come on, man. I mean, that's what he did is tougher than 99.9% of us that are on a message board or on Twitter. After that, he had some problems. I mean, let's be blunt. They brought in Adrian Martinez because they didn't think he was ready to start.
Right.
And he probably wasn't until Adrian Martinez showed up. We found out between Adrian and Avery, he responds to competition.
Right.
He really did. He stepped up when Avery knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm ready." Will played some pretty damn good football up until the KU game. And then, the Iowa State game, you can say he played good or not. His stats are, I think, pretty good for throwing the ball in those conditions. But he's been a gentleman. He's a great young man. And if he ends up somewhere, I will watch him play and root for him because this move isn't really as much about leaving K-State. It's about adding another page to your resume. I was good in that system, but now I'm here in this system and I've replicated numbers and I've shown. I didn't think Brock Purdy was a pro. He is. I'm not sure Will Howard is, but he reminds me a lot of Brock Purdy, so maybe he is. We'll find out. Brian, you've been around some good football players. Is Will Howard a pro?
I think he needs to go to another school.
I agree.
And learn and get into a different system. I don't know that he's a pro. I mean, he reminds you a little bit of Brock Purdy, but if we're being honest, Brock Purdy is better than Will Howard. And you can see it. Now, here's the thing. Brock Purdy played with a lot of pros, and people don't give that the credit that it needs to be deserved. Iowa State had a lot of pros, and Brock Purdy played with them. I'm not sure Will Howard did that at Kansas. Matter of fact, I'm positive that Will Howard's not doing that at Kansas State. So there's a huge difference between the two there. Having said that, do I think that he can make a professional roster? Absolutely. The trash that is in the NFL ranks. And I'm not saying Will Howard's trash. I'm just saying the quarterback play is bad in the NFL. And Will Howard is better than some third string or practice squad players that are currently in the NFL. So he can absolutely make a roster and make a living because third year guys, backup quarterbacks, those guys make a living. So he can do that. Absolutely. But for him, and I said it last week and I'll say it again, I think he needs to be selfish. I know you alluded to that a little bit, Glenn. Go be selfish. Go to a team and go be a starter somewhere. It's okay for you to be selfish sometimes. And I just think this is one of those times where Will Howard just has to say, you know what? I've given everything that I could to Kansas State. They've been good to me, but I've also been very good to them. But now I'm going to go be good for myself and go look out for myself and go play some football and try, just like you said, try to raise my profile for me. And that's okay to do that.
And two things, guys. One, I think Will Howard, just on the record, would look really good if he had Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Shanahan calling the plays. That might help a little bit. Secondly, though, and hopefully I'm stating the obvious here, I think I am, Will Howard should be remembered very, very fondly among Kansas State.
Yes.
Anything differently is disrespectful. The guy was a stud. He worked his butt off for K-State. He stayed loyal to K-State even when they brought in another quarterback and even when he had to be the backup and then the starter and then the backup again. And then this year we didn't know if he was the starter for a while. He just worked through so much adversity and stayed loyal and just kind of stayed true to the fight. I think in a lot of ways he embodies Kansas State football, and I think he loves. I don't think he said it. That guy loves Kansas State, and that love should certainly be reciprocated, no matter where he goes. I'm not saying he was perfect, but to remember him in any other way as a guy who did a lot for this program and for Kansas State football, it would be wrong, in my opinion.
Agreed. Ryan, he's going to be remembered well by most of us. But there have been some critics that have been over the top with this young man. I mean, over the top. And that seems to be the thing now on social media. Let's say the most outlandish thing, because just having an opinion doesn't get me noticed. So now let's scream for attention by, really doing something appropriate. And a lot of that's been directed towards Will, but it's just a small minority of fans, isn't it?
Yeah, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but that doesn't mean you have to have one on every. You don't got to be polar opposite one way or another. You can just sit back and appreciate what Will Howard did, right? But Howard, next year would be his COVID year, right? So he went through senior day, right? This wasn't even supposed to be a thing. So him leaving, there shouldn't be any bad blood there at all. But Brian, you talked about the trash in the NFL, and not that Adrian Martinez is trash, not that Skylar Thompson's trash, but those guys, Thompson's had some time with the Dolphins, right? I don't think that Martinez is with the Lions anymore, right? But if those guys can get their shot, with all due respect, Howard's going to get his shot as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think he's a pick. I don't know how long he's in the league, though. I think someone might give him a shot, but I agree with him. He needs to go do another system and replicate it. And maybe at a higher visible school, which is just the reality of Kansas State. The school we're talking about is pretty high visibility. Other schools that might be looking for a quarterback are high visibility. So it'll be very interesting to watch. But he was not the only person to say something strange at that press conference. I tell you what, there was a really strange moment at the end of Chris Kleiman's. We're going to get to this right after a short break.
GoPowercat.com's PowerCat podcast continues after this short break.
Is your January looking dry? Get some lotion. Get a humidifier. And better yet, get Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices across local stores to get the best price on a huge selection of drinks perfect for dry January. Every single time. Non-alcoholic wines? Have a look. Ready-made mocktails? Grab a straw and order them up. Beer without the alcohol? Yep, take your pick. You can find all of them here, in the app, in that phone that's in your hand. Could it be any simpler? Nope, not a chance. So shop for great deals on all your dry January beverages or other drinks and get them delivered to your door or blanket fort, maybe. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations. And don't forget to lotion up your elbows. They're looking a little dry.
Welcome back to the PowerCat podcast.
We are back. We are back on the Insiders. Man, I thought that break would never end. Tim Fitzgerald, Brien Hanley, Ryan Gilbert in for Tim Everson, and Glenn Kinley back in the hospital room. Glenn, I really hope you recover. I mean, you've been in a hospital room now for most
12
of
weeks.
fall.
I know, man. It's brutal.
They did give me a projector in here.
That's nice. I know they got,
Nice.
that's really nice. So you can just put the nightly news up there and say, God, that guy's good. Go to sports now. A strange moment, let's just put it that way, at the end of Coach Kleiman's press conference. I spoke to many people because this sounded like the same things Will Howard said later on, kind of Chris Kleiman said. And while Will Howard's was a goodbye, I don't think Kleiman's was a goodbye. I just think he was, I am so mad, I don't know what to say. And kind of that Ricky Bobby, what do I do with my hands? He was just all of a sudden saying words to get off the podium. And well, let's listen to it, because I'm told this definitely wasn't a goodbye. It was just maybe don't kill me. Please don't kill me for what happened.
Guys, appreciate all your stuff all year long. You guys have been great, and wish we could have gotten a win for everybody, but thank you for the way you handled everything and for treating me well. So appreciate you guys.
Glenn, have you seen that before?
No, but I think it was probably Chris Kleiman, I would say, is great with the media, first of all.
Yeah.
He's very genuine.
And he says honest things.
Right. And I think it was probably we don't know when we're going to talk to him next, as far as maybe after we find out their bowl, there'll be availability. But that's the last time in that room where he's talked to how many of the same reporters every week, or actually twice a week, I should say. So I think he was probably a little bit sentimental. I think that he knew that this was Will's last game. And you have a guy like Seth Porter and a guy like, Daniel Green. It was his last time in the locker room. So I think more than anything, he was probably kind of in his feels, as the kids would say, and just wanted to say thank you. I think what we've learned with Chris Kleiman is that he typically is pretty just transparent and honest. When he says the quarterback's a game time decision, we all think, what does that mean? What is he trying to tell us? And it's like, oh, he means the quarterback's a game time decision, right?
It's
and
not
so
coach
with this
speak.
one, I think people will say, what does that mean? And I think it means he was thanking the media, right? I think that's all there was to it. And it's cool. Like I said, he's great with us, and I think he was just being genuine and offering his appreciation. I wouldn't read into it too much. I think Michigan State filled their spot, so people can stop freaking out there.
Yep, and A&M's filled their spot. But Brien, he does have a good relationship with the media, and a part of it is he doesn't give us a lot of coach speak. Like what Glenn said there, sounds like coach speak, but he means that. We're going to decide on game day. There's not a whole lot of deception and playing games, and we ask him a question, he answers. If you make him mad, it might be a short answer, but he answers, and I appreciate that about Chris Kleiman.
Yeah, I mean, it's refreshing to have some honesty, and like you said, not all the coach speak or just the flat out lies, because there's plenty of coaches that'll just flat out lie to you in a press conference. And so it's just refreshing to see. But I think more than anything, I think what you said, Fitz, I think he was just irate. I just believe that he couldn't believe that his defense went out there and played that lackadaisical, lack of effort, and he didn't know what to do with himself. I think he may have been a little embarrassed, but I think he was just so fired up that it's like, okay, I just got to get out of here, because I don't know if I stay here another 10 seconds, I don't know what I'm going to say, and it's going to get me in trouble. And I think he's smart enough to understand I just got to get off of this podium, get out of here, and just move on, because you could see it in his face. He was furious, just furious.
Yeah. And guys, let's be honest, from bird's eye view, if you look at this season, I don't know that I'm not saying it was a failure, but I don't know if I would call it a success either. I think you're looking at
in that.
I think you're looking at a football team that didn't live up to its potential. I think he knows that if you played this season again, this football team could win 10, 11 games, and they went 8 instead, and they weren't going to go to the Big 12 championship even if they won on Saturday, but I think they still wanted that one definitely, and to send the seniors out with a win. So I think he was disappointed in Saturday's performance, but I think he knows that whether it's on him or whether it's on the players or other coaches or whoever, I think he knows this is a football team that could have been so much better. That this is a football team that just didn't reach its potential, which is a bummer. And in a way, we kind of got what we knew we were getting, which was a team with probably more depth, but without the star power. And there's just something to be said for the fact that they have to have 6 defenders staring at Deuce Vaughn. And there's something to be said for the fact that they have to have 3 guys blocking Felix Anudike-Uzomah. And you can debate all day on whether you'd rather have 4 good O linemen or 1 insanely good, or D lineman, I should say, or 1 insanely good D lineman. But there is something to be said for that. And this is a football team that felt like maybe it was missing the star power, to be honest.
All that is 100% true. And it is, and I'll just speak from experience, but we all see it. We all know football. We all watch football. Stars matter.
Yep.
They matter. And regardless if you have a bunch of good guys, you could look at our defensive line this year and you could tell the difference. They didn't have to double team anybody, and teams rarely did. And guys couldn't get off blocks. We didn't have the same type of pass rush. Anytime that we got pressure, it was always from blitzing. That's not sustainable. I'm sorry. It's just, that's not a sustainable way to be productive on defense. If the only way you can get pressure is by bringing more, I go, that's a problem. And it was a problem. I know we say this every year, and I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to sound like a broken record. Got to get better players. We just have to get better players, period.
That's not a very good song if it's a broken record. I can't get no satisfaction. I'll take that as a broken record. And speaking of lackadaisical, Ryan Gilbert is never lackadaisical. He's always 100% daisical. Gills, this just seems like the transition. Most bowl games end a season. This bowl game feels like the beginning of next season. We expect Avery Johnson to be the quarterback. We expect seniors to opt out. We don't know about Cooper Beebe. He might want to play one more game. He doesn't need to. Ben Sinnott, I felt like was saying goodbye because, he walked as a junior. He's an NFL guy. There's not many on this team, but he's one.
Right.
And he's already said he's going to the Senior Bowl. I don't think he'll play. I think some other seniors will sit it out just because they might be done. It's sad to say they might be done. This season has been a disappointment, but at 8-4 at Kansas State right now, I think it's a good sign people are disappointed.
Right.
There's expectations here.
And that's why playing in a bowl game can be so important. You obviously want that momentum for your team going into the next season, but all this extra practice time, you get 60 minutes of footage and tape to work on heading into next year so that these young guys can get the experience. Like you said, Fitz, you'd be surprised if Will Howard plays in this game. So this is going to be big for Avery Johnson to continue to grow. And this will be his first real shot at being that number one guy on the offense without having to, split with Will Howard and all that stuff. So back to Kleiman, though, I just wanted to say that I would love to see him have a press conference where he's just short and mean and maybe even a little rude to us, especially after a game like they had against Iowa State. Now, I'm sure inside of that locker room, Kleiman let him have it, I would assume. But you mentioned Fitz, he's a player's coach, and so he's never going to be that guy. But at some point, you've got to stop being the nice guy and just say, hey, man, like, we were awful today. We sucked. Be mean. Go after Fitz and not just make fun of him for having no hair or being overweight, but really just, be mad at us, right? And I would have loved to have seen that at least some point throughout his career. Saturday would have been a great time for Kleiman to do that, but with his final comments, this is it for the bridge players that came from the Bill Snyder that 2018 team, right? This is it for those guys. And so I think it kind of set in for Kleiman, like, hey, this is it. Like, we are transitioning into a new time. These are all my guys. There's none of these guys that helped us leave a legacy at K-State from what was there before. I've got the keys to this program, and nobody's really stuck around. Obviously, some of the support staff is still there with Taylor Bratt, but by and large, you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
I think that was sort of the emotion from Kleiman saying, hey, this is it. This is my team now, for real.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think this is a good time to do it. And as bowl games go, we seem to still think it's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I know you look at the bowl order, that's the second pick in the Big 12. After the playoffs and the near 6 games go, we expect Texas to be in one of those games, Oklahoma to go to the Alamo, and then Oklahoma State would typically be that next choice, but it sounds like the GoDaddy, I do it every time. The Pop-Tarts Bowl, I don't know how I get those two confused. There's nothing to do with each other. The Pop-Tarts Bowl is next. It's in Orlando, and it sounds like they were going to take the winner of the K-State KU game and are sticking by that, which would put Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl. If you're a KU fan, I don't think you're going to Liberty Bowl. That's next up. There's some schools like West Virginia and Iowa State who are in line for that. If I had to guess, you're going to be in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl down in Phoenix, which if you're in the media, that's great because they have a wonderful hospitality room. Just wonderful. Just fully stocked. But Brian, they've never been to Orlando for this bowl game. It's changed names every year. It's one of those games, but it is a highly regarded bowl game. They would play an ACC team. It looks like NC State. That feels like a good matchup if you're rebuilding. No disrespect to NC State, but it just feels like if you're rebuilding and you're going with a bunch of young guys, I'd much rather face them than some team that's loaded for bear and out to prove a point.
Yeah, I mean, NC State's a good football team,
right? But it's ACC.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, they're okay. And they're ranked, and I get all of that. And they've played that. What are they? I think they're 9-3. They just beat NC State or UNC. But if that's who it ends up being, yes, I would much rather play them than another Alabama. Especially the way that our roster is going to be constructed for this bowl game. Like you said, a lot of seniors are going to sit out. A lot of guys either just done or moving on, whatever the case may be. We're going to get some transfer guys that are going to jump in the portal that are not going to participate too, just like every school. I said, but yes, that would be a great matchup. Because again, while they're in the ACC and we don't necessarily have them in a high regard, it's still a decent football team and they're going to play tough. So that's a school that I'm not going to sit here and say that we should beat, but I'm going to say we should beat them if that's who it is.
Yeah, you didn't say it at all. Gills, I'm going to be honest here. K-State has gotten some really tough bowl matchups. Last year, I thought, okay, Alabama, look, they got some of the best talent in the nation, but it'll be watered down. And then everyone played. And by, games in, you could tell by the scoreboard. But I think this is a great opportunity. Go to Florida for a week over the holidays, kind of have some team bonding, wear those funny ears around. It's a Mickey Mouse joke. And I'm not talking about your ears, Gilbert. And, just move on to the next thing. And I kind of feel good about that.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, this is the sort of the game one of the 2024 season. When you think about it, right, that can be the launch pad into next year.
Yep.
And it's a crazy how much a week can change, because had K-State won this last game, you're like, I was ready. I'm like, give us Notre Dame, give us, Iowa. Right. And I don't know if it looks different. If they win that game, like, do more guys play in this game? And is it more of a let's go make a statement for the program rather than let's kind of turn the page? But it is wild how much a week can change, because you go from, now it's just a different picture for the bowl game, for better or worse. I'm not saying, that everything's ruined or anything. I'm not saying that. It's just kind of crazy to think about the difference in bowl game and in mindset of what we're talking about versus what we would have been talking about maybe 4 days ago.
Yep. Bradley Newitt has this great question. In the end, K-State only beat one team in the upper half of the conference, and that was Kansas, and that was tight. Was this team not as good as we may have thought? That's possible. I think this team just lacked that. We talked about the star power, and it's sometimes star power helps you internally, mentally. Deuce is going to get us out of this. Right. Felix will get that sack, and you kind of relax and go play. This team looked tight in situations, Brian. In some of those tight games, not Kansas, they looked tight, and they just couldn't quite get that next play done to win the game.
Yeah, I think so. Look, at the beginning of the year, I think a lot of us, myself included, thought that this was a minimum 10-win football team. And when you look at what transpired, some of the stuff that we thought was going to be a problem ended up being a problem. We thought that the secondary we were going to have to replace some guys. It may struggle a little bit. Up the middle, it might struggle a little bit. Well, some of those things came to fruition. Now, Daniel Green getting hurt, that doesn't help, and it seemed like every linebacker on the roster got hurt. And was out significant time, which that doesn't hurt. But you know what? All the big boy programs, it's the next guy up, and they have another guy. So we are in that mode of we just have to have that other guy. And I think the guys did an admirable job. I really do, for what took place. Not everybody's going to be down to your third and fourth linebacker on a squad. That just doesn't happen very often. But having said that, it's just there were some things that we should have been better at that we just weren't. And like you said, making another play here, making another play there. The Oklahoma State game was a game where guys got put in a position where they just weren't ready to play because of injury. Guys in front of them were playing, guys got injured, and they just weren't ready to play. Then you see them the very next week, and those guys are ready to play. It's just like young guys don't understand that it's next guy up. They didn't understand that. But that's everywhere. That's not a Kansas State problem. That's a cultural problem, a societal problem where kids just don't get hey, it's really the next guy up. You're really going to go in if this guy gets hurt. Oh, he'll never get hurt. 10 seconds later, he's hurt, and you're in the ball game, and you have no idea what to do. Yep. So that's just the nature of college football, man.
Gills, was Kansas State a really good bad team or a really bad good team?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question, but K-State, like Mike Tomlin, Brian, we got to bring this in. He says he never apologizes for winning, right? So just because the question, it doesn't matter who's on your schedule. You got to take care of what's in front of you. But with K-State's losses, it seems like every game this team just beat themselves and made more mistakes than its opponent. And that's why K-State has 4 losses on the season. If you could look at the Mizzou game, Oklahoma, every game that K-State's lost, there's something that K-State did, a few key plays here and there. The pick 6 at Oklahoma State, letting Luther Burden cook against Missouri. The first half against Texas was atrocious, right? Steelers suck.
Oh, wait a minute.
Come on.
No, that's wrong. But K-State really did shoot itself in the foot, and a few plays away from, being in a better position right now, without a doubt. But Fitz, if you're listening only audio, it's a good thing you didn't see what Fitz just did. It's fake news.
It was a well-crafted sign. You're watching or listening to The Insiders. We appreciate it so very much. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that thumbs up that you like this video. And, of course, let other people know that The Insiders goes live every day at 1:30. We will continue to do this for at least a while, I think. I think, Glenn, you're on board. I think Brian's on board. And I'm going to say Tim's on board because he's not here. And if we can't have Tim, we got Ryan Gilbert. Ryan Gilbert.
Yep, the best replacement in the world, right?
Yeah, well, okay. Let's move to basketball because
Gilbert, you're the Mitch Trubisky of the Insiders. Sorry.
Ooh. Do you get that reference, Fitz?
It's
the best backup, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was like a little cracker wafer thing at Trubisky.
Oh,
he is. He's best backup.
Okay. Jeez, he's got that damn Steelers mug.
My apologies.
I've got my terrible towel just above the camera.
Oh boy, this has descended into chaos.
Okay, go to basketball.
Yeah, let's go to basketball right now. Kansas State loses to Miami. It looked like the USC game to me, Gills, and the fact that it just looked overmatched. Too much length, too much talent, too much shooting, too much. And they didn't respond particularly well. But they have been shorthanded. They're going to get there eventually. Still nothing clear on Naquan Tomlin. He's rejoined the team in a mental sense. He's not physically practicing and doing those things, but he's being invited to team functions so that I think they just want to keep him on track, make sure he's doing the stuff he needs to do to get back on the team. But they got Oral Roberts tomorrow night at Bramlage. This is a good test. ORU's been a good program, isn't it, Gills?
Yeah, and this is a guy, Max Asmus, who you probably remember from the transfer portal, comes from Oral Roberts. He's now at Texas, but this was the guy that K-State really wanted, and so they're capable of producing some scores. So it'll be a test. But you mentioned the Miami game, the USC game. The theme of those two games, K-State's losses on the year, starting slow, right? Mm-hmm. K-State was putting the ball through the net at a really good rate in the second half down in the Bahamas. Which you guys like my tan. I think it's starting to fade off a little bit, but I think we're looking good. It goes good with the hair.
Yesterday or Saturday reversed it, I think.
Yeah, I know, right? That was a shock to be back in the cold. But starting slow really for this team has been the issue. Fitz, you asked Tang about Tyler Perry. What does he need to do to get back to having that consistent 40-minute performance? And so there's little panic on this team. Of course, the way that this team started last year is very similar to what's going on now. It's not about how you play here on November 27th. It's about how you play in March.
Okay. That was the basketball segment, folks. But they do have Villanova coming up in a couple of weeks. They've got to get better or they're going to get their doors blown off by those Wildcats. Yeah. And that's, got to be their goal to kind of be to full strength by then.
It feels like this is a basketball team. I think they have the potential through the roof. I think they have a lot of really good pieces. It feels like a puzzle where the pieces are like spread across the table right now. And maybe like a few of them are on the floor and Naquan Tomlin is like the piece you can't find. And you're like, where's it at? Who misplaced it? What's going on? But I think if they can put it together, man, like, they have, like, Tyler Perry's good, man. Naquan Tomlin is good. Arthur Kaluma is good. And Cam Carter is proving he's, like, probably better than maybe a lot of people realize. So, like, they have a ton of pieces. Michaela Bridges is just fun to watch, right? It's a matter of, like, can they figure out how all these guys can play together? Some of that with these guys from the portal, I think Tang mentioned it. Like, Tang loves experience. We know that. Like, he loves to get a guy from the portal who's played 100 basketball games. The problem with that is that guy's played 100 basketball games in a different system. And sometimes you're spending as much of the benefit that you get from those games, you also have to erase some of their memory of this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what coach wants me to do, this is when I need to score, this is when I need to blah, blah, blah. And so it feels like they have a lot of guys who are good, but they got to figure out how to put them together. If they can, I think that they can be really good. But it's a matter of when does that happen.
Well, that's why you schedule Miami, Providence, all these good teams, USC,
That's
even
right.
South Dakota, right? That's how you figure out what you need to work on. I don't think K-State learned anything about itself against Central Arkansas or Bellarmine, any of those teams, right? So, Glenn, that backs up your point. That's why the scheduling is so important, playing good teams.
Well,
one thing is,
I'm
sorry.
No, I want to say something, Brent. People think of this guy as just a big, sexy offensive lineman, but he was a high-profile basketball recruit coming out of high school. And I do want to say this, that Jerome Tang mentioned today that Tyler Perry was an off guard for 3 years at North Texas, and now they're trying to make him a point guard. Brian, it doesn't, maybe it'll click into place, but he mentioned Marquise Noel took him a while to get used to everyone, but that dude's a point guard. That dude's been a point guard his whole life. He's got that point guard mentality. He knew how to create for others, even though maybe he hadn't done it as much as he should. He started doing it. This is all new to Tyler Perry, and I'm not sure it's working.
That's literally what I was going to say. It's not working at the moment, but it takes a little while to be a point guard. He's going to have that scorer's mentality. Look, Marquise Noel scored the basketball, but he was also knew how to set up other guys to score the basketball as well. That's a skill. That's not something that, it just comes naturally. That's a skill that's learned. So he has to be able to do that. Look, and right now, like I said, it's not working. The main thing, though, above anything else that we're talking about, we have to defend. And defending is going to have to be something that we're going to have to do to be able to win some of these basketball games. You're not going to win a whole lot of games if somebody else is scoring 80, 85 points against you. That's just not sustainable. It's not going to work. So we've got to be able to defend. But you're 100% right, Fitz. Got to get the point guard mentality. It'll take some time. Look, it's going to be January before any of that falls into place. It just is. And if anybody thinks it's going to happen before that, you're kidding yourself, because it's not. Doesn't mean we can't win basketball games, but for it to look like it's supposed to look, that's what I'm talking about. It needs to look like it's supposed to look, and that just takes time, especially with the guy that's played off guard probably his entire life.
And Marquise Noel was a pass-first point guard, right?
Yes, he was.
Somebody's going to hear that and say, "Oh, Glenn doesn't think Marquise Noel could score." Guys, he could give you 28 or 30 on a given night, but if I'm a defense, I'm more terrified of him having 18 assists or whatever it was, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who broke the NCAA tournament record for assists. It's just a different mindset. And Tyler Perry's it seems like he's a score-first point guard, and maybe the problem is, it feels like, I know they've asked Cam Carter to score, and they've asked that to make him his priority. And Tang's talking about Cam Carter, go out and try to score. And when you do that, other opportunities will come about. It feels like Kaluma wants to go to the hoop when he gets the basketball. They have a lot of guys that are score first, and they might need somebody to either be pass first or be screen first or whatever it is, because it feels like a lot of guys it's a good problem to have, I guess, a lot of guys who want to get buckets. Like, yes. But again, they got to figure out how to tie it all together.
Got to have somebody sacrifice. That's what it is. You got to have somebody sacrifice. On every basketball team, you got to have somebody that's willing to say, yes, I can score, but we're better when I let that guy score and that guy score. It's just, that's the way basketball works.
Absolutely.
Everybody can't be the alpha.
I can't shoot. So my promise is I actually will never take a shot. If Tang wants to have me join the squad, I will only pass, and only about 40 to 50% of those passes will end up in the hands of the other team. So, Coach Tang, Coach Dream, if you're watching this, think about it. Maybe get back to me by Thursday. I'd like to maybe, before Christmas for sure, but just an idea.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're listening.
I mean, let's be honest here. The best shooter here in the foursome is Ryan Gilbert. He's a very accomplished shooter. He's not a maker at all. He doesn't make. But
I make drinks.
Shoot.
I make your Pacificos every night.
That's very true. He's a very good maker of drinks. Gills, though, they've got to get better. They've just got to. I'm not looking for that breakthrough voila game. I'm just looking for the incremental improvement that maybe we saw coming out of the USC trip to Vegas. Now that they're back home, let's see that kind of build up over the next couple of weeks.
And this staff, they always talk about getting 1% better, right? And that's what you just want to see, steady growth. It doesn't have to be overnight, where this team suddenly looks like it's capable of winning a national title, right? It's going to happen over time, and not to make excuses for this team or anything like that, but I asked Tang, like down in the Bahamas, like, hey, are you starting to get more continuity just with your lineups that are on the court, at the same time, and who meshes well together and stuff like that? And he said, well, Ray, to be honest, we haven't, we've had so many injuries. Day-Day Ain's been out. Tomlin hasn't been with the team. Glover has missed every regular season game this year. So there's still a lot to figure out about what works best, and that's why I'm really being optimistic with this team that they're going to figure it out at some point, just because like that was kind of the moment for me, like, okay, they really haven't had much chances to gel together, right? Like even David Gasson missed a summer trip to Israel, right? Because he was with the Netherlands team. And so there really is a lot more for this team to grow and get better with. Tyler Perry, I think mentally just has a lot on his plate right now, because when you're at North Texas, especially when you're at Coffeyville Community College, you're supposed to score. There's nothing wrong with that, but you are the scorer on that team. Same thing with North Texas. Now at Kansas State, I think that's probably why he's struggling to score, is because he's trying to think about the offense and, okay, do I pull the trigger on this shot, or do I dish it out to Cam Carter for that 3-pointer? And so he's struggling to, because if you think of, just a split second, that's the difference between being open and being guarded, especially when you're playing against these opponents that Kansas State has played against.
Yeah, guys, are we talking about the similar thing to what we just talked about with football, which is K-State has a lot of good players but doesn't have Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson? Is it is Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson the Deuce Vaughn and Felix Anyudike Uzama here?
And even Naquan not in there as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think it could be, but the difference, basketball is just so much different than football when it comes to that, because in basketball, especially college basketball, you can have a guy, look, Marquise Noel, he's on an NBA roster now. Is he ever going to be an NBA star? Probably not. But he was the star of college basketball the last 2 weeks of the season. In football, it's a little different, because those guys are usually the stars, play in the NFL for a while. And are stars at the next level. That's usually how it works, depending on position, but that's usually how it works. I'm just not sure that it's the same. I think in basketball, because there's only 5 guys on a court at a time, you can get away with not necessarily having to have a star. UConn would be the perfect example. They had really good players, and yeah, they had a guy that's got drafted in the lottery, but nobody in here can even name his name. That's the difference. Nobody knows who he was. And they won the national title last year. So while, yeah, you got to have some stars, I think you can get by with having really, really good basketball players, especially if they're older at the college basketball level, because so many teams go younger these days.
Yeah, and they do. They have a lot of good guys. Like, I think David Gasson has a high ceiling. Will McNair has been like very good, actually. Day-Day Ames has been solid. I mentioned Michaela Bridge, and RJ Jones can shoot the ball really well. They have a lot of really good basketball players. I think if they can figure it out and put the pieces together, this could be a basketball team that's really good and also really fun to watch, which is most important for us.
The construction of this team is it's different. It's apples and oranges, really, there's 2 superstars on last year's squad.
Right.
Tang is now learning how to coach and learn how to win with, a guy here like Arthur Kaluma, all these guys that aren't necessarily superstars, but they're stars, right? And so they're learning how to win a different way, if that makes sense, which is okay, which is fine.
I don't lack stars. I got Brien Hanley. I got Glenn Kinley, and I've got Tim Everson, who couldn't be here today. So Ryan Gilbert sat in. Gills, thanks for sitting. Oh, I forgot the wrong thing. Thanks for sitting in, and we appreciate it very much. That is it for the Insiders. I am Fitz. We appreciate it. Make sure you're checking out GoPowercat. Should have mentioned this at the top. I'm so bad at this. 75% off. It's now a Cyber Monday sale. Make sure you get your subscription to GoPowercat, and we will be back next week with another edition.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yes, please. And make sure you send emails to Ryan Gilbert saying you're loved, even though your boss hates you. That'd be nice. He needs that. We appreciate everyone being with us as we close up shop with the Insiders.
Thank you for listening to the PowerCat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
You ready to ride?
I thought you'd never ask.
Now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's the new original series, Lawmen, Bass Reeves.
Bass dedicated to justice.
From executive producer Taylor Sheridan, co-creator of Yellowstone, starring executive producer and Emmy Award-nominated actor David Oyelowo. It's the untold story.
I'm warning you.
Of the greatest American lawman.
Your wicked days are done.
Lawmen, Bass Reeves. New original series, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.